Hi there and welcome to the most watched business show in the country. This is the Business Weekly Show on City TV. My name is Michael Obodu. Hit me up on Twitter at mobodu. And yep, the show is sponsored by Standard Chartered Bank Ghana Limited. Standard Chartered Bank, here for good. Are you ready for one hour of business news delivered to you with a touch of fun? Ready? Let's go. The 2021 Media Budget Review took center stage this week for obvious reasons. It determines government's plans for the rest of the year. But before we bring you the actual presentation, we'll start off with what government had originally planned for this year and some reactions from various industry players. So we take a look at key indicators like the growth targets the government has set for this year. So in this video, we'll be showing you what was planned and how far we've come.
The 2021 budget statement and economic policy for the 2021 financial year was presented to Parliament on Friday, 12 March 2021 by Honorable Asechi Mensah-Bonsu, the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Majority Leader and Leader of Government Business, with the theme Economic Revitalization through Completion, Consolidation and Continuity, or the Wonyawohia budget. Before giving updates on progress made with the implementation of government's programs and policies, the minister gave out the following key macroeconomic targets: overall GDP growth of 5%, non-oil real GDP growth of 6.7%, end-period inflation of 8%, fiscal deficit of 9.5% of GDP, and gross international reserves to cover not less than 4 months of imports. After about half a year of economic activity, how well off are we with meeting or missing the above target? Courage Mate is an economist with Databank, and he gives us a breakdown.
So for fiscal deficit, they have a target of 9.5% for 2021. For growth, they have a target of 5.0% for 2021. And for inflation, they have a target of 8.0% for 2021. Now, let's assess the risk of meeting or falling off this target, starting with the fiscal deficit target of 9.5%. And I believe this is the target that faces the biggest risk of not being achieved. If you follow the trajectory of poor performance of revenue, despite efforts to contain expenditure growth, we are risking going above our 9.5% deficit target for the year. And so there is then a strong case to take a second look at our revenue expectations and tighten expenditure controls for the year.
Mr. Mate gives further breakdown in relation to the growth and inflation targets.
But given the resurgence in COVID cases, given the slow pace of vaccination, there is an increasing downside risk to growth, to the recovery. So no doubt we are going to experience a recovery. And it appears the recovery will be above 3% this year. It appears that we might likely see a favorable base effect in the second and third quarters of this year to push growth above 4% this year. But are we likely to hit 5% this year on account of the resurgence in COVID and also slow pace of vaccination? It looks doubtful. But when it comes to inflation target, the target is 8%. Now, to expect us to do 8.0%, again, on account of expected uptick in inflation in the second half of this year, that again might look unattainable. We might do above 8%. But if you look at the targets within the Bank of Ghana's range of 6 to 10%, we are more confident that we are likely to do inflation rate below 10%, inflation rate in single digits by the end of this year.
A lot of people lost their jobs when the pandemic struck. The country is already dealing with the issue of unemployment, especially amongst the youth. So this definitely worsened the situation. Take a look at the projects the government plans to roll out to address this problem and what has been achieved so far.
The stories of graduates who are unable to gain employment or set up their own businesses are many. Every year, a large number of new graduates adds to the unemployed labor force. Currently, over 640,000 of such people who are part of the labor force are struggling to find meaningful jobs. It appears creating and sustaining employment remains one of the biggest challenges of ruling governments. Following a promise in the 2020 budget, the government maintained 97,373 graduates in the National Builders Corps NABCO initiative. In 2021, government has said NABCO will work on the exit plan for trainees and continue to create further training opportunities to enhance the employability. In furtherance of this objective, the government will design and organize series of training for qualified graduates under the models captured under NABCO. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, the economy and government's plans were brought to a standstill. The government attempted to mitigate the pandemic's impact on households and businesses by enacting the Coronavirus Alleviation Plan and the Medium-Term COVID-19 Alleviation and Revitalization of Enterprises Support Program in mid-2020. Many businesses are using these interventions to recover from the negative impacts it has had on them. The 2021 budget also highlighted the promise of reviewing and optimizing the implementation of government flagship and key programs such as Planting for Food and Jobs, which the Agric Ministry says has created jobs for over 2 million people as at 2020. Also, the Ministry of Trade and Industry on the One District, One Factory initiative, which has so far seen 104 factories in operation, has led to the creation of over 150,000 jobs. Some analysts have, however, doubted the accuracy of these figures due to unavailable data. Economist and lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Patrick Opoku Asumin, in an interview with City News says, taking into account the number of job losses that have been witnessed in recent years due to the banking sector cleanup and the lingering COVID-19 pandemic, governments must work hard to create more sustainable jobs with its flagship programs.
This is a country that we struggle with the public sector wage bill. So why do we want to absorb more people? And by the way, I'm sure you've heard recently people come out to complain that NABCO workers have not been paid. Instead of all those government programs, NABCO, NYEP, I wish that we had focused on how the main flagship programs, 1D, 1F, I wish that we have spoken carefully about what mechanisms or what arrangements we have so that people are now going to those areas because those are more sustainable. So
let's now hear from labor expert Senor Ajabing.
The current agitations about the public sector wage increments, the 4% that was announced, has not gone down well with the public sector unions. And so there are some, undercurrents brewing in the system. And I think that it will be the opportune time for the finance minister to assuage the fears of the employees.
I spoke to some students who shared their expectations with regards to job creation in the upcoming mid-year budget review.
I would like the government to create more job opportunities for the youth so that after we are done with school and everything, it won't be very difficult for us to get jobs because now even level 400 students, after their schooling, they've been complaining that they've had their degrees. The degrees are very good, but still they are not getting jobs and other stuff.
I think if him and then the government provide more jobs for the youth, I think that one will be much more better for us. At least we'll not have the need to worry about what we're going to do in future and all that. So him and then the government providing more jobs, that is what is actually our need right now for the youth
to help. I think that we students need more skillful ideas in studies, and then we should be able to have greater ideas and be more skillful in every aspect of studies.
The tourism industry, I dare say, is the worst affected by the pandemic. Some efforts have been made by the government to help revive the industry. In the 2021 budget, the government projected that the sector will begin to pick up. But for hotel operators, they say they have not been able to break even yet, talk less of growth. The Ghana Statistical Service revealed that in 2020, the services sector contracted by 2.6%, while the hotels and restaurant subsectors recorded contractions of 74.9%, representing 0.8% of GDP. As of June last year, the tourism and hospitality sector was reported to have incurred losses running into $171 million as a result of the pandemic. The finance minister, during the delivery of the 2021 budget, indicated that the hotels and restaurants subsector was expected to recover gradually from the severe contraction it experienced in 2020. He projected a growth of 2% in 2021. To achieve this and improve the tourism sector, the government communicated some policies, including embarking on activities enlisted under the Beyond the Return program. In 2020, the Tourism Ministry launched the 10-year Beyond the Return program as a successor to the Year of Return program to promote tourism and homecoming of Africans and Ghanaians in the diaspora and to foster economic relations and investments for the diaspora in Africa and Ghana. The ministry, through the Ghana Tourism Authority, was expected to carry out inspections and licensing of tourism establishments and enterprises to improve the quality of service delivery within the sector. In 2020, a total of 4,774 establishments were inspected and licensed. As part of the government's policy to ensure that all regional capitals have at least an aerodrome to improve connectivity and boost tourism, the sector ministry was expected to conduct feasibility studies for the development of an airport in Cape Coast. Other sites identified for the construction of aerodromes through public-private partnerships include Apoa Mpoho and Yendi, among others. There were also plans for the effective implementation of the Marine Drive tourism project. With all the efforts that have been made so far for the first half of the year, what do players in the services sector make of the progress? Mr. Edward Akanyamike is the president of the Ghana Hotels Association.
Well, if I have to look at it from the hotels' point of view, I don't think we are. We are still in the negatives. I mean, if you look at what went on pre-COVID 2019 vis-a-vis what went on in 2020 and now, looking at our occupancy rates, we are nowhere near that. We are still in the negatives. And I'll make reference to the 10% negative growth reported by the Statistical Service recently, I think for the first quarter. Okay, so if you go by those figures, I don't think we'll achieve that growth you're talking about.
So far, we have brought to you expectations of some people from various sectors of the economy. But just in case you missed the actual presentation, here are highlights of the key issues that were captured in the mid-year budget review.
The Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, at the outset of the presentation indicated that government would not raise new taxes and request additional financing from Parliament for the 2021 financial year.
Mr. Speaker, this mid-year fiscal policy review that I'm presenting does not come with a supplementary budget, and our revised fiscal framework for 2021 is kept within the fiscal target of 9.5% of GDP. We are staying within the 2021 appropriation. Respectful Mr. Speaker, let me repeat. I'm not here today to ask for more money. I have not come. Mr. Speaker, I'm not here today to ask for more money. I have not come to ask for more taxes. I have come to update the House on the performance of the economy for the first half year of 2021 and our plans for the unexpired term of the year consistent with Section 28 of the PFM Act.
He indicated that government was within its fiscal targets for the year.
The Ghana Statistical Service reports the overall GDP growth for first quarter 2021 was 3.1%, The growth was even better, excluding oil, at 4.6%. The Bank of Ghana Composite Index of Economic Activity attests to the strong growth recovery, with the index growing at 33.1% at the end of May 2021, compared to a contraction of 10.23% at the end of May 2020. Mr. Speaker, on inflation, we are witnessing one of the lowest numbers on record in about 2 years. Inflation, which at the height of the pandemic hovered around 11.8%, dropped to 7.5% in May 2021, before inching up slightly to 7.8% in June. The Bank of Ghana will continue to implement appropriate monetary policy to maintain inflation rate within the target of 8 plus or minus 2%. The city has been relatively stable in the past 4 years and maintained its stability even in this pandemic year. For the first time in the Fourth Republic, the exchange rate did not see a spike after an election year.
Ken Ofori-Atta then outlined government's plans to create 1 million jobs over the next couple of years.
One of the serious impacts, Mr. Speaker, of the COVID-19 pandemic has been the loss of jobs, which has exacerbated the unemployment problem, particularly among the youth. As such, government is ready with a comprehensive program to tackle this intractable problem. The goal is to create employment opportunities for 1 million of our young people over the next 2.5 years by igniting, Mr. Speaker, a high spirit of entrepreneurship. We will count on the support of this august House for this.
The Finance Minister also announced that government's Agenda 111 for the construction of hospitals across the country would commence on August 17th.
The objective is to use the local teams comprising of Ghanaian consultants, project managers, and construction firms. It is envisaged that upon the successful completion of Agenda 111, Ghanaians across the country will experience a marked improvement in access to healthcare. Mr. Speaker, government and the project coordinating team have worked tirelessly on Phase 1, and I'm happy to report that pre-contract works have been completed for 88 sites for the district hospitals. Mr. Speaker, we expect to commence Phase 2 construction 3 weeks from now, from 17th August 2021. Mr. Speaker, an important project such as Agenda 111 requires extensive preparation and due diligence. We are confident and happy with the level of detail and attention that has gone into the pre-contract works.
So the chicken doesn't only look good, it really smells nice. Now we've brought you the mid-year budget review. We'll now be telling you what people made of it. We start off with poultry farmers. To say they were disappointed would be an understatement. So the people feel ignored, and they have described this as very unfortunate.
Poultry farmers across the country are currently faced with scarcity and high cost of maize and other ingredients needed for feed production. Since the latter part of 2020, these farmers have bemoaned the development and are warning of the collapse of their industry should the problem continue to linger. The situation, sadly, has gotten worse over time, forcing many of them to sell off their dying birds to foreign countries at relatively cheaper prices in order not to run at a complete loss. In the just-ended mid-year budget review presentation, the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced the government's plans to modernize the agric sector by investing in initiatives that would improve production and productivity in the rice, poultry, soybean and tomato subsectors this year. The president of the Greater Accra Poultry Farmers Association, Michael Nyako Ampem, in reacting to this announcement, lamented the lack of detail and timelines for this projection and the failure of the government to address the looming shortage of poultry feed for their birds.
They stated that they've consulted the value chain and so they are putting in place measures to ensure that maize production goes up, poultry production goes up, and soya production goes up. But the details of it, how is it going to go up, by what percentage, and when? Because we know that we had this 20 million broiler revitalization project, which was hit by the COVID in 2020. So if we are going to restart it, when are we restarting it? Are we starting this year, next year? The maize production, it could have said maybe we are moving from 1.6 that we had last year to maybe 1.9 million tons or something. Soya, you give the details so that there's some reassuring. Right. But in the interim, in the short term, where the things have run out, how do we ensure that we have food security? Because I've always maintained and I always say that food security is national security. When people are hungry, they don't understand anything. So it's something that I think that I was a bit disappointed.
Mr. Nyako Ampim then reiterated earlier calls to the government to help provide some solutions to the challenge to save the poultry industry.
There's a shortage of maize, shortage of wheat bran and soya. The prices are high and farms are shutting down. So I was thinking that something like a situation like this would be mentioned and highlighted. It was not done, but that's not the end of the story. But we are asking that the government looks at it, the finance ministry really looks at the situation, because it's there. Farms are shutting down. We are not seeing the effect now, but in the medium to long term, we'll see the effect. Farms are shutting down. And I say that between October and December is the peak period. So if we don't do something about it, from October to December, we are going to suffer a great loss.
Apart from poultry farmers, construction folks too aren't happy at all. The number of times they have agitated, threatened to go to court, or to shut down facilities they have constructed because they haven't been paid. You know, these are hard times, but clearly it's harder for people who are not being paid their due, even though they've worked hard for it.
Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Construction, Emmanuel Cherry, has expressed his disappointment with plans for the construction sector of the economy in the just-read mid-year budget review. He argues the failure of the finance minister to make mention of a board for road funds, which will lead to the payment of contractors for work they have done in the past, as well as the lack of clarity for the involvement of local contractors in government Agenda 111 project, is disappointing. The Agenda 111 project will focus on the construction of 101 standard district hospitals with accommodation for doctors and nurses, 6 new regional hospitals in the 6 new regions, 1 regional hospital for the Western region, rehabilitation of Efian Kwantak Hospital, among other projects. Emmanuel Cherry spoke to City Business News.
Yeah, I'm really sad because since January till date, we don't know our fate as industry players in the construction sector. The reason being that ever since the president has taken over oath into the highest seat and the highest office of the land, he started putting up the administration structures of the entire country. But coming to the inaugurations of board or composition of the governing boards, we are at a loss, because we don't know exactly what is happening to the road farm board as we speak now. The issue before us is how clear and how transparent is the process. Because as we speak now, as industry players, key stakeholders, we don't know what is exactly happening in that sector. What is going in there? Even though they said phase 1 has been done, phase 2 is here too, but we are not involved, we are not being carried along. The building contractors are there. Nobody has called on them. Before we realize, they said the award has been done, the contract has been awarded to who? We don't know. Some of them we see or we hear in the airwave that they are selling this contract 10%, 80% and thereabouts. What is happening to us as a country? Let's face facts. To be honest with you, that Agenda 1111 is supposed to be a game changer, but the way it's being handled is being, shrouded in secrecy. There's no clarity in there to confess. The president must come again and look into that. Those who are in charge of that particular Agenda 111, they must sanction them and then they come and give a certain clarity to those particular jobs as we talk now. Because we don't know exactly what is happening as industry players, especially the contractors who are to execute those particular jobs.
The government is making a lot of effort towards improving upon its revenue mobilization agenda, and I think that's very commendable. It's also impressive how ICT is being used to drive the move. However, a basket can never get full no matter the quantity of water you put in it. The same way, all the efforts the government is making to raise money for the country will be fruitless if efforts are not being made to seal loopholes that lead to revenue leakages.
Tax analyst Geoffrey Okanse is pleading with the government to not just put systems in place to identify and eliminate revenue leakages through the government's establishment of the Revenue Assurance and Compliance Enforcement RACE, but also utilize the taxes to improve the lives of Ghanaians. The Revenue Assurance and Compliance Enforcement, which is scheduled to launch on 2nd August 2021, will identify and prevent revenue leakages while reinforcing the culture of compliance nationwide. Speaking to City Business News, the analyst encouraged government to ensure that taxpayers' monies will be used to foster compliance.
It is one thing improving the collection systems and then putting the machinery in place, digitizing the systems in place, and making sure that you actually educate the people on the need to pay taxes. And it is another thing also showing to the people what you are utilizing the taxes for. What I expect government to also do is that there needs to be a clear depiction of what the tax monies are being used for. You know, one thing that improves compliance is when people see and look around them and they see that they are seeing roads, they are seeing electricity supply, they are seeing basic and social amenity supplies. Look, recently there was a report by the CDD that indicated that people are paying, pregnant women are paying after delivering at some hospitals. If people pay taxes and pay an arrangement underneath the National Health Insurance Scheme, they are expected to benefit free healthcare, and they go back there to the hospital after delivery, they are being made to make payments. Then they lose the trust in what they are paying. This can also affect compliance. And when they also see the sort of things we are using the monies for, wastage in the system also creates some drawbacks to compliance.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
From the mid-year budget review, we turn our attention now to the President's 26th COVID-19 updates to the nation. New restrictions were announced that banned funeral receptions. When such restrictions are imposed, event organizers like this one here suffer the most. What do you do then when you've already been paid by a client to organize an event for them and you've also started making expenses to cater for this? It's been almost a year or even more than a year of bad business and literally almost running out. And yet, things seem to be turning out even worse. Charlie, it's really hard. The President first banned all public gatherings on March 15, 2020 in his 8th televised broadcast to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the country. At the time, Ghana had recorded only 6 cases of the virus. In his 9th address, President Akufo-Addo extended the ban on public gatherings until the end of May 2020. As part of his 23rd COVID-19 update to the nation, Nana Akufo-Addo announced that until further notice, funerals, weddings, concerts, theatre performances and parties would remain banned. The restriction was reinstated after Ghana's case count at the time surged to over 6,000 and the death toll at 449. With the new Delta variant reported to be more prevalent, Ghana currently has over 4,000 active cases, while nearly 800 people have succumbed to the virus. President Akufo-Addo reintroduced the ban on post-funeral receptions, a move the Event Vendors Association of Ghana say would further worsen the plight of the industry that is still trying to keep its head above water. The group stressed that the restrictions introduced last year have severely disenfranchised its members who are still counting their losses. Hagan Richmond Ajari is the administrator of the association.
People go to nightclubs, people go to bars, people go to churches, people go to all these social markets and all these social gatherings. And even if you look at markets, somewhere like Agbogblosi, Kadeshi, and all these big markets, there are a lot of people moving to and fro each and every blessed moment. Nightclubs, people sing to the music, people do a lot of jumping, people do a lot of things, like what we also do at funerals and parties. So what we were urging or what we were thinking the government would do was to ensure the strict adherence to the protocol, but not a total ban. First of all, this ban has really affected us throughout the last year till now. And some of us are still recovering small, getting some small businesses, and we are now doing. So government bringing another ban again, like a big thing, a big blow to us. Because, before an event, it doesn't start one day. Event is in sequence. You have to go and rent chairs, you have to go and rent the event center, you have to go and arrange for food, you have to go and, it's a chain. So when you get the money now, you distribute it all across. The unfortunate aspect is that during the MDNSI grant and the tourism loan and everything, none of our members got some. So we are really in a deep, big mess.
This is really a difficult time to be president. How do you protect the people from contracting the virus without killing industries at the same time? That's $1 million question. Well, Mr. President, even though I don't want to be in your shoes at the moment, more vim to you. Now, still on the pandemic, one sure way in place we can contract the virus is at our workplaces. It's very easy to assume that your colleagues don't have it because they don't show any signs. Well, we spoke to a safety professional who shared some pointers on what to look out for, especially as this third wave emerges.
With the prevalence of the third variant of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, the Bureau of Public Safety is asking employers to be more vigilant with the enforcement of the safety protocols to minimize the spread of the virus on their premises. Presently, Ghana has over 4,000 active cases, while nearly 800 people have succumbed to the virus. President Akufo-Addo, in his 26th COVID-19 update to the nation, urged businesses and organizations to adopt a shift system to prevent a spread on their facilities. Speaking to City Business News, Executive Director of the Bureau of Public Safety, Nanaya Akwada, stated that the call was in the right direction and businesses must do all they can to ensure the safety of their staff.
Just as the President mentioned, work employers must, explore avenues on, making employers work from home. If there are biometric devices at the workplace that are usually used for monitoring attendance and all, it's about time they change these to resort to other technologies to monitor their staff. Also remove fixtures like carousels, redundant guardrails, etc., at the workplace, because these are spreader points. If possible, we must be able to wipe down doorknobs, handles, etc. And of course, ensure that there is water, soap, and tissue papers consistently available at all times and at advantage points at the workplace. The one place that this can spread most is at the workplace. It's at the workplace that all of us spend so many hours, between 8 to 16 hours. People are spending it at the workplace, exchanging files, touching doorknobs, handrails, exchange of documents. We all fall to the familiarity trap on a daily basis, where just because we know some people and we've been with them for a while, we think it's okay to drop our mask and let our guard down. So it is important that employers and worker unions consistently work towards reducing the risk of spread in the event of a case discovery at the workplace.
The monetary policy rate, which is the rate at which banks borrow from the central bank, has been maintained, and the reason is because of the coronavirus pandemic and especially this third wave. We know that things are still not yet back to normal, so increasing the rates will obviously not be in the interest of the public. Well, you're also aware that loans are pretty expensive in this country, so hiking that rate will definitely not help the economy. Well, we spoke to an economist who has been shedding more light on the way forward.
After assessing the performance of the economy, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana, at its 101st press conference, maintained the policy rate at 13.5%. This is the second time the central bank has maintained the policy rate at 13.5% this year. A statement issued by the Monetary Policy Committee attributed its decision to the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, high budget deficits because of revenue underperformance, as well as balance of risks to inflation and growth, among others. The committee also revealed that although the process of global growth recovery is ongoing, driven by continued policy support and rising consumer confidence, the outlook remains uncertain. On fiscal operations, it noted that the budget deficit exceeded its targets in the first 5 months, mainly on the back of revenue underperformance. It thus noted that going forward, expenditure has to be aligned to revenue performance to support fiscal consolidation efforts. Based on macroprudential risk assessments, the committee expects the banking sector to withstand mild to moderate credit risk shocks, although a new wave of the pandemic in Ghana could further elevate credit risk and would require close monitoring of banks' capital and liquidity buffers. Reacting to the assessment in an interview with City Business News, economist and lecturer with the University of Ghana Business School, Patrick Isuming, stated that the maintenance of the policy rate at 13.5% was expected.
And I think it's somewhat expected. That the fact that they kept the rate unchanged was expected. The upside risk to inflation is subdued. We can see that we are firmly entrenched in the medium-term target band. And I think even though the economy has recovered somewhat in the first quarter, we saw that GDP is about 3.1. I think there's still a little bit of weaknesses on the side of the economic activity. The bank acknowledged that the credit growth to the private sector has not been strong. In fact, I think for most of this year, in real terms, it's been negative for most months in this year. And on the other hand, you see that even though we've had a positive growth, I think it's not really the V-shaped recovery that you would have expected. The decline was sharp. So one would have expected that the rebound would have also been sharp. But it wasn't. I think 3.1% is still less than half what we did in the corresponding year, the corresponding quarter last year. So maybe the bank could have taken a little bit more action to improve, but we have to remember that at their last meeting, they cut the rate. So maybe they need to wait for the effect of that to fully materialize and observe how the economy is doing.
Do you know that you owe about 11,000 Ghana cedis? Yes, you. I could literally see the shock on your face, but it's actually the reality. The country's debt stock has risen to about 330 billion Ghana cedis, and the COVID-19 pandemic is being blamed for this. Interestingly, the minority in parliament is projecting that the figure could almost double by 2024. That would mean that you and I could owe about 22,000 Ghana cedis. Hey, Charlie, things better improve for the economy sumo. Na ye deka rough.
The new debt figure brings Ghana's debt to gross domestic product GDP ratio to 76.6% as at the end of May. This is the highest recorded so far in the past year, slightly higher than the debt to GDP ratio of 76.1% recorded at the end of 2020, according to data from the Bank of Ghana. A breakdown of the debt numbers shows that the component of the debt secured outside the country, after remaining relatively stable in the first quarter rose significantly by about 20 billion Ghana cedis from 141 billion Ghana cedis as at the end of March 2021 to 161.5 billion Ghana cedis at the end of May this year. The external debt component as at the end of May 2021 made up 37.2% of the total value of the economy, which is projected to be about 434 billion Ghana cedis for 2021. On the other hand, the component of the debt secured locally increased steadily in the first 5 months of 2021. When compared to the figure recorded at the end of the first quarter, Ghana's domestic debt rose by about 7 billion Ghana cedis, bringing total domestic debt to 170.8 billion Ghana cedis at the end of May this year from the 163.6 billion Ghana cedis recorded at the end of March this year. The new figure represents 39.4% of the projected GDP for 2021. The domestic component of the total public debt contains the Financial Sector Resolution Bond, which was 15.2 billion Ghana cedis as at the end of May 2021. On his part, economist with the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Patrick Assuming, mentioned that government should be concerned about the debt situation.
We should be concerned, not necessarily because of the quantum of the debt or the debt as a ratio of GDP, as people like to refer to. I think we should be concerned because we've piled on the debt, and I'm not sure that there's too much to show for it. If you expect that in a pandemic like this, the government is expected to spend, and because economic activity was low, obviously what will happen is that the debt will go up. I think the problem is that we are not we can't really point to what we've done with all the debt we've accumulated and what it's doing for the economy. And secondly, we are not generating enough revenues. If the debt had gone into areas that are generating cash flows or generating revenues that we are using to service the debt, it won't be too problematic. At the moment, almost half of all the revenues we generate go to service the debt, and that one is a problem. And if you couple with the fact that the revenue side is not doing well, that is why we should be worrying about the debt. I think the fact that we've taken so much debt because of the COVID is in and of itself it's not problematic. What is problematic is not knowing exactly what we have done. We've taken all these debt. We don't really know what we've done and how to generate cash flows or generate enough economic activity and revenues to pay off the debt. That is the angle from which the debt is a problem.
According to the International Monetary Fund's 2021 Article 4 consultation press release, which contains their staff report and statement by the Executive Director for Ghana, the IMF's debt sustainability analysis shows that Ghana remains at high risk of external and overall debt distress under the baseline, even though public debt is assessed as sustainable going forward. The Bretton Woods Institution is meanwhile projecting Ghana's debt to GDP ratio to hit 83.5% at the end of this year.
Meanwhile, the ranking member on Parliament's Finance Committee, Kesel Atoforsen, says the country's total debt stock will stand at 624 billion Ghana cedis by the end of 2024, adding that the country risks defaulting in the repayment of its debts. Mr. Atoforsen insisted that the current government's incompetence and mismanagement of the economy is directly responsible for the current situation.
It is important for members to recognize the fact that Ghana's public debt as at April is indeed 332.4 billion Ghana cedis. In the first quarter of the year 2021, the MPP administration has added 27 billion Ghana cedis to our public debt. This means that obviously they have approximately 48 months from the time they took office to go. And they've done 3 months, and obviously that has accumulated 27 billion. But sadly, if you were to analyze where we are going, Ghana's public debt by the end of the year 2024 will be 624 billion Ghana cedis.
Now to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The Ghana Union of Traders Association says the agreement may not be productive unless African countries strive to manufacture as many goods as possible in the continent. Just like Ghana, a lot of African countries export mainly raw materials, Now, this would defeat the purpose of the agreement as it seeks to ensure that African countries trade amongst themselves goods that were manufactured locally.
The Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, says the African Continental Free Trade Area will not succeed under the current rate of the continent's industrialization program. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, is an ambitious undertaking that brings together 1.3 billion people in 55 African countries to create the world's largest free trade area as measured by the number of participating member states, with the rules of origin of the agreement strictly stating that member states trade in goods produced in one's own country. GUTA believes until the continent takes time to build its industrialization efforts, AfCFTA will not work. Dr. Joseph Obeng is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association.
Continental Free Trade Area will not succeed. Continental Free Trade Area, if they've taken their time to evaluate it, can never succeed until we have made conscious efforts to industrialize Africa, to make sure that we patronize the goods and services that is being produced in this country, this continent. And that's the essence. And so that's the driving force of the Continental Free Trade Area, that we should patronize the goods that are produced in our respective countries. And that's why the rules of origin have been enshrined and established in this Continental Free Trade Act, and the same is in the ECOWAS Protocol. So they have done this to curb dumping into our societies, because all that we seek to do is to industrialize as a continent.
Some indigenous oil marketing companies broke away from their mother association over some concerns. They formed another association which they believe will better serve their interests. So what were their concerns, and how is this move going to help them to address it?
In May 2021, the Association of Indigenous Oil Marketing Companies of Ghana broke away from the 18-year-old Association of Oil Marketing Companies, AOMCs. They attribute the decision to what they describe as failure of the AOMCs to protect Ghanaian oil marketing companies from unfair treatment in the downstream industry. So far, about 15 Ghanaian-owned oil marketing companies have joined the newly incorporated association. Speaking to City Business News, the administrative director of the association, Patrick Eka, outlined some of the challenges that the OMCs have been faced with over the years, which they would soon be addressing.
One issue that shows its head amongst a lot of them is communication. A lot of the OMCs feel that, as I said early on, a lot of them feel that their voices are not heard. In policies that should dictate how operations go on in the industry, they feel that they are constantly just hit with legislation after legislation, letter after letter, of this fuel price is going up, or this is going there. They feel that there's not a real roundtable opportunity for them to voice out their issues. And they also feel that there's the inability to pay the taxes. Our general objective is quite cool. We just feel that in an industry that belongs to Ghana, which is the downstream industry that belongs to Ghana, should have the Ghanaian voices the loudest. We're not saying that we can operate without assistance from international bodies, or without learning from mistakes that international bodies would have done, or who have stood the test of time. But we do feel that it is quite about time that Ghanaians took the hold or the reins of an industry that is benefiting them in the long run.
He further explained how the association plans to tackle the issue of fuel price increases in the country.
When it comes to fuel pricing, a lot of people forget that it is a structure, it is a build-up. You have to factor in the taxes that will be paid. You have to factor in all the costs that come into play when fuel is made readily available for the end user. As an association, our biggest tool is lobbying, whether you like it or not, with the right institutions, the individuals who can make the decisions.
Now to our final story of the week. this whole fertilizer smuggling thing poses a major challenge for us as a country. Many of it finds itself in neighboring countries, whilst our farmers can barely get enough of it. It literally could threaten food security in the country. The Agric Ministry says it is doing something about it, and this time around it is involving personnel from the security service. I believe this will go a long way to addressing the challenge. Now, the military, who believes in obey before complain, who would dare stand in their way? Definitely not me.
The Ministry of Food and Agriculture says it has started enlisting the help of the country's security apparatus to help put an end to the smuggling of fertilizer from Ghana to neighboring countries. In recent times, fertilizers purchased by the government of Ghana, which are allocated for distribution to poor farmers in the northern regions of the country, have ended up in Burkina Faso and northern parts of Togo along the borders with Ghana. President Akufo-Addo recently charged the chiefs and people of Nandam in the Upper West region to support the various security agencies to halt the smuggling of the government's subsidized fertilizer to neighboring Burkina Faso. In an interview with City Business News on specific steps being taken to end the phenomena, the Director of Crop Services at the Agric Ministry, Seth Osei Akoto, said the collaboration with the security establishment is yielding results.
We have identified that as a challenge. However, we have tried to put a lot of measures in place to hold the fertilizers. One, we have talked to all the regional security councils and come out of measures that can curtail the smuggling. The last 2 weeks, the Honorable Minister for Food and Agriculture sent me to the Upper East region, and then prior to that, I had also communicated to the Upper West region about how the regional security should institute measures to curtail the smuggling. And I think what they are put in place, at least the monitoring has reviewed that the smuggling is coming down. So that is one of it. And then nationally, the leadership of our Honorable Minister is also playing a significant role. He's also liaising with the security minister, national security minister, and other security agencies to see whether they can support the ministry.
So our time is up. Thank you for tuning in to the Business Weekly show here on City TV, your most watched business show in the country. The show is sponsored by Standard Chartered Bank Ghana Limited. Standard Chartered Bank, here for good. Catch you same time next week. Don't miss out on the business dashboard at 10 p.m. sharp every weekday, with a repeat at 7 a.m. the next day, and our website citybusinessnews.com as regular business news update for you. Drop us a comment and tell us what you think about the show. Catch you same time next week. My name is Michael Obodu. Follow me on Twitter at @mobodu. Stay safe, stay informed, and bye-bye.